Hello everyone and welcome back to Nordvik. This is episode 7 and today we're gonna do something that I really have been looking forward to for quite a while, and that is working on the football stadium here in Nordvik. We're starting off with some nice cinematics from the last episode 6. If you didn't watch that one, it was all about public education. We built a ton of different kinds of schools and this university I can see here. And the stadium that we're going to work on, I decided to put that right next to this high school, the main high school, if you might call it that, in Nordvik. But as always, I also did a little thing between episodes, and that is expanding some suburbs, really, just building out the area, getting more people in here. I think almost doubled the population in the city, and did manage to get a fair amount of work done. The first thing that we're gonna be building in this episode is a train station, or really just a train stop that we're gonna place down right next to where the stadium is gonna be. I did find a sort of an empty asset, if that makes sense. The train station that I placed down, it's no buildings attached to it. It's nothing attached to it, which means that you can customize it however you might like to customize it. And that is really nice, because I really didn't find any assets that fit this area when it comes to train station assets. So I decided to just make my own. And it is very simple. It's no buildings next to it. It's just a functional train station with like platforms on each side, and that's pretty much it. Ended up detailing a little bit with some planters and some trees, also with some decals on both sides, and also some staircases that you can see here that leads up to where the platforms are. But other than that, it's a very simple train station, and that's exactly what I wanted, because I didn't want it to be huge, because I knew that I didn't have that much space to work with, because the stadium is quite large and I don't have a lot of space to plop it down, so I needed to be quite conservative with building this train station itself. What was constantly in my mind as I was building this train station was accessibility, and that is all about accessibility for people with different kinds of disabilities. So I did build staircases leading up to the platforms, but I also placed down this ramp on one side to make it a possibility for people with disabilities to get up here. And by doing that, it just adds a little bit of detail that you might not even spot at first, but me, who's playing this game and seeing Nordvik up close, I realized that it is there, and it sort of just helps. It's more like a personal thing. It's just this tiny detail that makes your city feel more alive. And it's not always the most obvious thing. Like if I didn't spot, or if I didn't talk about that ramp on the side of the platform, you might not even realize it. You might not even realize it was there. And I think it's very hard to pick it out in the cinematics at the end, for example. So it's a very small thing, but it helps out a lot. I also wanted to further emphasize that I want Nordvik to be a cycling city, so I placed a lot of bicycles here to sort of emphasize that a lot of people, they use their bikes to get to the train station, and then they jump on a train to go somewhere to work, for example, so they don't have to, drive to the train station, or they don't even need to drive to where they work. They can just use their bikes. And I also continue the bike path that I started in episode 4, I think, the downtown episode. I continue that, starting from downtown, and also it passes right through this train station and actually goes. It's supposed to go all the way to the university, but it doesn't do that quite yet, but that's at least a plan. So I want Nordvik to be a cycling city, and I also have the policy of I think it's called prefer biking, or it's a policy that you can turn on in game, and really just makes it so that more people are choosing their bikes instead of their cars. And I think it helps out quite a lot when it comes to traffic, because I haven't really experienced any issues with traffic. I don't have a lot of people in Nordvik, so that's of course one reason why there's not a lot of traffic. But the roads that I have, they're not really placed down with traffic in mind. It's more like how they look and how they feel realistic. And realism and this traffic in this game is two quite different things. So I'm actually quite surprised that we still haven't had huge backups of traffic. It's actually quite nice. But now I'm working on the stadium in itself, and I did download a pack of stands or bleachers, whatever you might call it. So it's not one huge stadium. You can actually just really create it from scratch, and I decided to make it somewhat big. Of course, if you are thinking about like Wembley, for example, or Anfield, or Santiago Bernabeu in Madrid, that's a completely different size. But for the size that I'm going for, I want this to be a fairly big stadium, and there's not a lot of big stadiums in Scandinavia. I think the largest one might be in Sweden, in Stockholm. I think they might have like maybe even 50,000 seats in there. I know they have a pretty large one in Copenhagen, where they currently are using it as a venue for the Euros. I think they might have like up towards 35,000. I don't have the numbers right now, but I'm guessing. The biggest one in Norway is in Oslo. It is the home to the national team. I think they are also up towards 30,000 seats, and then there's a few in the 20,000s in all of the Scandinavian countries, but most of the teams in the top divisions or the top tier in all of these countries, you're looking at stadiums with 10,000 seats and less than that. It's just a few teams that have quite large stadiums, and the rest really have what you might call very small. I'm talking 10, I'm talking 5,000 seats. It all depends on how big the club is, how much money the club has, and how long has it been successful. Because you see, with the more older teams that are more traditional and have been traditionally good for a very long time, they of course they have the funds to have a large stadium. But this stadium right here is the idea is that this team that plays here, they are most likely, well, they're definitely playing in the top tier in their country. I wouldn't assume it is a top team, like a team that wins every year and does well in Europa League or Champions League, but it's definitely up there and then fighting for a chance to win the table and to maybe do a cup run and maybe win the cup. So it's a very good team, and I was thinking about what this team could be called as I was building the stadium, and I decided to go with a somewhat boring name with Nordvik FK. Now FK stands for football club. I know in English, of course, club is written with a C, but in Norwegian, Finnish, Swedish and Danish it's all written with a K. So it still stands for a football club, but it's written with a K. So this team, they only have football in mind. It's not a sports team. They don't have other activities involved. It's just football, and it is just not necessarily just the senior team. They might have a under 19 or under 16 team involved, but definitely the ones that are playing at this stadium is the senior team. This area is actually quite hilly, so it is somewhat tricky to work here, but I do love a challenge, and I actually prefer to build my cities in this game on rather steep hills, because it is a challenge and you can create more unique cities that way instead of just laying out a grid and just letting time pass. Really, it's a challenge, and I do like working with a challenge. But because of the somewhat steep incline from the train station and up to the stadium, I had to have a way to really get people from the train station to the stadium, because they couldn't just walk all the way around and walk around the road that goes underneath the train line. They really need to get as quick as possible to the stadium, because a lot of people would probably take the train to one of these home matches. This is probably the biggest team definitely in this region, but also nearby, and probably would be hours and hours away to the next big team that is playing in a top tier in the country. So every time they would play their home matches, I would expect a lot of people to be taking the train from outside regions to catch one of these matches. So I built a pedestrian bridge going across, as well as another ramp that goes from the train station and up to the stadium, so that once again people with, for example, disabilities can easily get up as well, so they don't have to go all the way around. And it's just another thing that makes it a little bit more realistic. And all of these bridges and paths and all of that, they are functional, so we do actually see people using them, which is really nice. And I do want to place down these event spawners in and around the stadium, so that we can get a huge amount of people. Because right now I just place down what you might call park spawners, so it really does function as a park, but they don't really attract hundreds or even thousands of people. They might attract just 5 or 6 or or 10 people. So I actually have to go ahead and download these spawners, but I do want to create these events to mimic a home game, because it would be quite cool. I want to get a lot of people in this area, and I want to see traffic backing up, and I want to see hundreds of people waiting for the train. I want all that. So but in order to really function, I probably need to expand a little bit more, get more people in the city, and maybe also work a little bit on my public transportation. I do have train, of course, but I think I need buses as well to really make this function. If I want to see it as I'm picturing it in my head right now. But continuing working with the train, I needed to place down several different kinds of staircases and really just make sure that it looks like it is actually functioning, even though the terrain makes it a little bit difficult. So I did place a staircase right here on one of the entrances. And what's really cool about all of these stadium assets or stand assets is that they all look like they have their own entrance, and that's really what I want. I don't want everyone to go in at one place. That's very unrealistic. Why would a stadium just have one entrance? They usually have like 12 or 15 different entrances all around these stadiums. So that's another thing that I really love about this asset. And I'm placing down a statue right here. It's actually a statue by I think it's Beethoven, which sounds a bit silly, but I like the statue, and I felt like I had a spot for it right outside one of the entrances. So let's just picture that this is probably one of the founders of the club, or maybe it's a very successful coach, and it's not a composer from Austria, I think it's from. But I'm finishing up inside the stadium with placing some ad boards and an actual functional screen that I found on the workshop that would function as, showing off different kinds of highlights during the game, and as well as keeping up with the scoreboard. And after a game, a lot of people would probably be a little bit hungry, so I placed down a McDonald's outside, because this huge stadium wouldn't just be a stadium. You would probably have a shop meant for like shopping merchandise, club merchandise, and you would have restaurants. You would probably also have some offices in the main building with all the windows. Maybe it's offices for the local FA, Football Association, and also place down a pizza shop. I think it's a Finnish chain of restaurants, Koti Pizza. So place it down on the other side, so that it's a little bit further away from McDonald's. But now you at least have the option. You want hamburger or you want pizza, and that's pretty much the two options you have most of the time. Now I had this little spot on the side here from the train station, and I didn't know quite what to put there. I was thinking about a parking spot, but I wanted to place down something more unique, and I think this is more than unique. It's a very nice looking hotel. It is a Scandic hotel, which is a chain of hotels all around Scandinavia, so it definitely fits. This is a probably very popular spot to have different kinds of meetings through work, for example. They will probably have a lot of office space, not really office space, but meeting rooms that you can rent. Also fans that are traveling to Nordvik and are rooting for the away team. They might spend the night over here if it's a long trip, as well as the opponents. They might catch the train and then spend the night at this hotel before playing at the stadium the next day, in hopes of getting 3 points to bring back home to where they came from. And also just adding some more detail in the back to have a little bit of a parking spot for the people that work here. Now, of course, we need a parking spot right next to the train station. And instead of doing a functional one, I decided to plop down some decals and draw a fence around this little area, and just place down a few prop versions of cars that I have found on the workshop, because this little area it's not big enough to place down a parking lot road, for example, and it's also not quite rectangular, so it's a unique shape. And when you have these unique shapes, the best thing is just using surface painter and paint asphalt all over the place, and use decals and prop versions of cars. And honestly, it kind of works better than placing down a parking lot road, because now I can actually choose how many people park here at all times. Instead of with parking lot roads, you might not ever get any cars there, because you're not the one that's placing the cars. It's actually people driving there, and they might not always do that. And the last thing I'm working on is quite an interesting one. I also was wondering what could I build in this little area, and I placed down what in my mind is a abandoned hydropower plant, or maybe it's an abandoned water facility. It's placed right next to the dam. It would have some sort of connection to it, but right now it's not being used. They might have placed another one, a more modern one, further away from the city, and right now it's completely empty. And I decided to create this cool little beach area in the back. It's very much hidden away, and I think if you visit this area, you only visit it because you know of it. It's not something that is there's no signs that leads to this spot. It's very much a hidden and secluded spot. So I placed down some dirt decals to function as a sort of a pop-up parking lot, as well as creating a parking lot in the front as well. But that parking lot in the front, it's more used for trucks and RVs, camper vans, for little long-term parking. But the one in the back is just an empty area, and they decide to park there. Because this area right next to the river, or right next to the canal, it is a very much industrial area, sort of run down. But lately you can see that they are starting to build up, creating newer and more exciting things, like this stadium, for example. I don't think the stadium is probably older than, I don't know, maybe 10-20 years. So it's a little bit of gentrification we're seeing here. And earlier this week I went over to our Discord channel, or Discord server you probably might call it, which you should join, because I asked there for name suggestions on this stadium, because I didn't quite know what I should call it. And I got some very good suggestions that I basically couldn't choose which one to use. So I created a poll on my community page on YouTube. A lot of you did actually respond, and I love that. And over 50% went with the second option, which is the Nordsjö Arena. Now, Nordsjö is Swedish and it basically means North Sea. And I was trying to think about some storylines, like why is it called this? And I decided to really draw on some inspiration from a very successful Norwegian football team. You probably might have heard of it. It's called Molde. Current Manchester United coach Ole Gunnar Solskjaer used to coach the side, and it is the previous club of one of the biggest talents in world football, Erling Braut Haaland. And their stadium is called, well, it doesn't matter what it's called, but it's called up after the main sponsor. And the sponsor, I think they make oil platforms in the Northern Sea, and of course that means that the sponsor has a lot of money in order to fund a large stadium like this. So my idea was that in this alternate universe that we're sort of creating right now, what if Nordsjö is the company that creates oil platforms in this alternate universe? So they would have a lot of money, and Nordvik, of course, it looks like it's very much close to the coast. That means that there's probably maybe even the headquarters for the oil platform creating company that is Nordsjö in this timeline, in this universe. That might be placed in Nordvik, so they would have close ties with the club. And that's probably why Nordvik is a successful team, because they do have a very strong financial sponsor in the back. So that is my backstory, that is my storyline behind this stadium, and really the name behind the stadium, more importantly. Now I do think I want to do more of these, I won't call it competitions, but ask in the Discord server for suggestions, and maybe do a poll on YouTube again for different kinds of names or different kinds of builds that might pop up. I don't really know, but I really did enjoy it, and hopefully it's a cool experience to be more a part of this series, and it probably makes it more feel like it's not just my series and you're watching it. It might also feel like it's also slightly also yours. But I did place the Nordsjö Arena sign, and I painted them green, as well as the seats in the stadium green, because I wanted Nordvik Football Club to be wearing green kits. That's the only reason. It's not a lot of good teams. There's not really a lot of teams that wear green kits, and I feel like Nordvik as a region is quite green. It was either green or blue, like blue because of the fjords and the rivers. But I do like green as the fields and as the forest. But as you probably already figure out, we are now at the end of this episode. We are now just left with some cinematics here. I hope you enjoyed, as always. Let me know down below what you want me to build next. I think I'll build up the area on the other side of the road from the stadium in the next episode, just to fill in that spot and really almost finishing the city of Nordvik, because it is quite scaled down. But when I finish up that little area, I might also be just finished up with the more built up and urban areas. That means I only have suburbs left then, and I'll do most of them off screen. So yeah, we're almost finished with the city, which means that we can probably work on more unique projects outside of the city center. But that is enough rambling. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you very soon. Thank you all for watching. Bye for now.